Hello and welcome to BikeWale, and this is the new Pulsar N160. But this does not replace the existing Pulsars in the Bajaj range in this segment. So you've got the old Pulsar 150, you've also got the Pulsar NS160. Both those motorcycles will continue with this. And the reason for that, Bajaj says, is that there is demand for both these motorcycles. In smaller towns, people still want the older Pulsar 150. It's an aspirational product. People crave to have it. And of course, the NS160 brings in a lot of margins for dealers. Again, it sells in a few pockets, not all across India. Now this one, Bajaj says, is going to come into a category that it defines as an entry-level sport category. A category where you've got the 4-valve Apache 160 and the Xtreme 160R. But there are three things that a motorcycle needs to do, or boxes that a motorcycle needs to check to be called sporty. What are these three things? And whether the N160 checks those boxes, well, that's exactly what we're going to find out. The first step in delivering a sporty and opinion-altering motorcycle is new age, aggressive and at times distinct styling. The N160, like its 250cc sibling, does check the first two boxes. And it comes together as a good-looking and aspirational motorcycle too. It has the right proportions. Its head-down, tail-up stance gives it an authentic naked bike look. The tank extensions and the belly pan, not to mention this black paint scheme, all come together to deliver one likable and cohesive offering. Nothing feels out of place on this design. Maybe the MT-15 reference dripping off the headlamp could have been avoided. But that apart, we like the way the N160 looks. Now the second box that a motorcycle must check if it wants to stake claim on the sport word is the seating ergos. They need to be a good balance between control and comfort. On the N160, it's not a very high bike, the tail's not very high, so it's easy to swing your leg over. And then the foot peg for the rider is rear set, but it's not extremely rear set, it's also not very high, so it makes for a comfortable seating posture. Here it's easy to put your leg on it. And then the handlebar again is not very low, which is something that we see in really sporty motorcycles. It's also not very high, which gives you that laid back stance, so it's neutral. And the seat is curved, which pushes you a little ahead, so automatically instead of sitting up, you're slightly leaned forward, and that gives you a higher sense of control. So that sport bit in the seating ergos are clearly there to see. They're not extreme because at the end of the day, this is a motorcycle that's going to be used in the city. So yes, the sense of control is high, comfort's not too bad, and it's a box that the N160 does check. Now the third and the most crucial box that the N160 must check is on-road performance. And it's not just the engine performance, but also the way it handles, the way it feels, the way it makes you feel as a rider, the controls, how they respond to it. And that's what we're going to look at now. The engine is an air and oil cooled single cylinder unit. It makes close to 16 bhp and 15 Newton meters of torque. So it is less powerful than the NS160. But the focus with the N seems to be low and mid-range grunt, adding to rideability and feel of performance lower down the rev range. A rev range majority of riders end up using. And therefore, the torque curve is more or less flat and it kicks in early in the rev range. This is felt almost immediately when you start riding. And as a result, whether one is riding to work or keeping up with his or her friends on a weekend ride, short shifts become the norm. We mostly rode the bike between 3,000 to 5,000 RPM in the city, and it felt tractable and usable throughout. Moreover, downshifts to overtake or plug a gap in traffic isn't really needed if you're around 4,000 RPM. Progress is potent, and the N never feels lazy or underpowered in such a scenario. However, if you're riding with enthusiasm, going down the gearbox to keep that progress and momentum is the only option. And you won't mind doing it because the engine is a refined and near vibe-free unit. No matter what the RPM, the engine never gets intrusively buzzy. And because of that, you don't feel bad about revving the nuts of the N160. It never feels like you're hurting the bike. And if you decide to go touring, 90 km/h is where it feels the best. It has enough grunt from there to make overtakes easy, but 100 is easily doable too, because neither the bike nor the engine feel stressed out or out of their comfort zone at this speed. Plus, the vibrations don't increase dramatically or feel irritating even when the bike is sitting at 7,500 RPM close to its red line for an extended period. Now the N160, much like its elder sibling, the N250, is a very lively motorcycle on the road. So it feels agile, it feels light. When it comes to changing directions, it's just right up there for the job. Now, when you, let's say you want to get into a corner, all you need is a slight push of the handlebar and the motorcycle reacts. So you're not really struggling, or you don't have to work the motorcycle hard. And when you do that, then the way the front responds, and with it the whole motorcycle, it just feels so predictable that it builds a lot of confidence in the rider to push this motorcycle or enjoy the motorcycle come a set of twisties. The same thing when you move into the city. This lightness or the nimbleness of the motorcycle is again something that riders would appreciate and enjoy, especially if you like filtering through traffic really quickly, because again, it doesn't take a lot of effort. The way your seating is, the way once you grip the tank and you've got light pressure on the bars, all it takes is, you know, little pushes on the handlebar and the bike just goes through traffic without a problem. So it's quite enjoyable in that sense. And then you've got the controls. Clutch, one finger operation, but again you can feel where the bite point is, so that kind of brings that additional involvement in the motorcycle. Or when you're riding it, again the throttle, not too much effort to use it, it's pretty linear. So again, it brings all of it together quite well when you're riding the motorcycle, brings that fun element into it. And then when you go out on the highway, it's not a motorcycle, even when you're riding flat out, that it's going to feel unstable. Even when you go over a section of bumps, it's not like it's going to move around anywhere. It stays quite settled. Even when you're overtaking traffic or crosswinds, it's not something that gets affected very easily. So in that sense, it's a very stable, nice to ride, dynamically capable motorcycle, and that's what you want when it comes to a motorcycle that carries or wants to carry the sport badge. Now, one of the big visual differences between the N160 and the N250 is the exhaust, or the lack of it. So now this one's got a midship exhaust or in between, and the reason that Bajaj has done that, they say, is to improve or have a sportier sound quality to it. So we're going to start it up for you, and then you can tell us in the comments whether you actually find it sporty or not. So that's it idle. This is up to 5,000 RPM. And this is closer to the red line between 7 and 8,000 RPM. There's another thing that you can immediately tell when you do this, is that how linear the throttle response is. So you can literally hold the revs steady, not stationary, but steady at the RPM that you want. So that's a good reflection of how easy it is to control the throttle on this motorcycle. Now the N160 is a city bike at the end of the day, and therefore ride quality is important. On the N160, the ride is agreeable, but nothing really to write home about. It handles the small undulations and bumps well, flattening them with authority. And even the more pronounced stuff like shallow potholes and bridge joints don't exactly send root shocks or upset the bike or the rider. But no, it isn't plush or pampering. The rider can feel those potholes and joints quite clearly. Now when it comes to features, the N160 scores over its competitors. It gets dual channel ABS and bi-LED projector headlamp. Both of these options are expensive add-ons and don't just tick the box for more features, but add tremendous value as well. Having said that, the N gets a simple and basic part digital part analog instrumentation with just the trip and distance to empty reading, which are the highlights. The competition, however, has a nicer, more tech-savvy system complete with Bluetooth connectivity. Like we said at the start, Bajaj says that the Pulsar N160 comes into a category that it calls an entry-level sport category. And we decided for any motorcycle to carry the sport tag, it must check at least 3 boxes. And the N160 has checked those 3 boxes. In what degree? Of course, you must have figured out in the course of this video, but the 3 categories are styling, seating ergos, and performance or on-road feel. And on that front, the N160 is pretty much there. No real complaints on that front. Now, this is a category where you already have the likes of the Hero Xtreme 160R and the Apache 160 4-valve. Again, 2 motorcycles that we've come to really like and appreciate, enjoy, and in fact recommend to people because of the way they ride, because of the way they feel. And the N160 doesn't really bring anything game-changing or outstanding into this class, but it matches those motorcycles on various fronts. So is this the default buy in that category? We don't think so. But is it really off the game when it comes to the Xtreme and the Apache? Again, not so much. So it's finally down to whether you'd prefer the styling of this or the real rider involvement that you see in the Xtreme, or would you want a product that's also good looking, but it has that sort of grunt, but doesn't carry the same refinement as the N160, which is the Apache. So it's a choice that you need to make, but I think in terms of having a motorcycle that checks boxes and that is an involved motorcycle to ride, a fun motorcycle to ride, especially in the entry-level commuter going up, that sort of category, I think Bajaj's done a good job with their 3rd generation of the Pulsar.